So the Baltimore Ravens have some massive decisions to make in the coming days and the coming weeks during this 2025 offseason. So we got an absolutely loaded episode of Ravens Reports for you guys today. We got the Baltimore Ravens leading sack producer with 12.5 sacks this season, Kyle Van Noy, on the Pat McAfee show, talking about one of the Ravens' new defensive coaches, how excited he is for Chuck Pagano. We also have another Ravens coach that was actually released. They mutually parted ways. We're going to talk about that with Chris Hewitt, as well as the Baltimore Ravens' biggest issue for the playoffs that's got to get fixed. We're also going to talk about the Baltimore Ravens free agents this year, who's going to stay, who's going to go, talk about the guys they should prioritize, as well as some draft updates and news for how many picks the Ravens are projected to have and much more. So let's go ahead and dive into the content. At number one, we know Kyle Van Noy headed to his first Pro Bowl. He was fired up and excited about going there and being part of that experience. 12.5 sacks this season. What a signing from Eric DeCosta to find this guy off of the couch in the middle of the 2024 season. He would go on to have, I think, 9.5 sacks last season, and then 2024, this year, had 12.5. Big-time producer, pass rusher, impact, difference maker, leader on the Ravens defense. He was fired up about the new hiring of Chuck Pagano, who has experience as the Ravens defensive coordinator, the Bears defensive coordinator, the Colts head coach, and much more. But here's what he had to say about his new coach, Chuck Pagano.
You guys took Chuck Pagano from us. Congratulations. Do you know him? Aside from talking to him on the program, he's the man.
Hey, honestly, I tweeted at you guys the other day. You guys are 4 for 4 with getting people jobs, getting people paid. We appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Well, we're lucky to do it.
We're honestly happy to have him. He's obviously Harbaugh's guy, but getting to know him a little bit outside of football, just the man he is, he's first class, and to have him in the building just adds that juice. He's got that old school juice,
yes,
that you need to have in a building. And I think that's something that the Ravens are missing besides Harbaugh, on the staff. We have the young guys. They brought Dean Pease in as a consultant, and now you brought in Chuck Pagano. I mean, the sky's the limit for that group, leading with Nate Wiggins now and Kyle Hamilton, who's an avatar, who's behind us. He's playing golf too. They're too far. But just a great group of guys in the secondary, and we are excited. We're excited to get them in the building, bring that old juice energy up in there.
At number two, got some really good news for the Ravens, who are going to need to stock up on some more talent. They are projected to get the maximum amount of compensatory picks, which is 4. And if you guys aren't aware what a compensatory pick is, basically, if you lose players in free agency, other teams sign your players, you actually get incentivized for that. You get rewarded for that, for providing talent to the rest of the league. The Ravens have been historically good at collecting these compensatory picks. They're projected to get a 4th-round pick for Patrick Queen, who went to the Steelers in free agency, signed a pretty nice contract with Pittsburgh, and then 2 5th-round picks for Clowney, who went to Carolina, Geno Stone, who went to the Bengals, and then a 6th-round pick for Kevin Zeitler, who went to the Lions. So looking at this list, the Ravens lost last year is actually a good amount of guys, and the Ravens still won their division handedly, made it to the divisional round of the playoffs. We know how that ended. It should have went further, but the Ravens able to retool, restock every year. Baltimore leads the NFL with 56 compensatory picks since the system began in 1994. They're so smart and well-ran, they know how to get those extra picks back, but that's good news for the Ravens because at number 3, they got a lot of free agents upcoming, and they're going to need to restock and retool some talent. I don't think it's quite as I don't think we're going to lose quite the amount of talent that we lost in last year's free agency. Most of these guys are role players and not really starters, but there are some starters here. Let's talk about it. But so we got wide receiver Nelson Aguilar. He's a role player. He's like wide receiver 3, 4 sometimes. I don't think it's a massive loss to lose Nelson. Not that he hasn't played a good role for us and made plays, but don't see this as a big loss if he were to depart in free agency. Chris Board, linebacker. The Ravens are going to need to find another linebacker. Chris Board had a nice season, especially in those pass situations, playing that second linebacker next to Roquan Smith. Offensive lineman Ben Cleveland, who never really got a chance to start or make an impact for the Ravens. Malik Harrison. It was between Malik Harrison and Chris Board that they were kind of rotating there at the second linebacker position. So linebacker is definitely a need for the Ravens. Wide receiver Deontay Hardy, he was hurt most of the year, the return specialist. Quarterback Josh Johnson, we know he's a backup. I think the Ravens will probably have a different backup this upcoming year. We'll see. Josh Johnson, I think he's about to be 40 years old. Offensive line, Josh Jones, backup. And then we got starting left guard, Patrick McCarry. So the Ravens need to figure out what they're going to do with left guard, and they're going to need a swing tackle because McCarry's kind of been the fail-safe guy. McCarry could actually see a decent payday because he got a lot of starting tape. Cornerback Trayvon Mullen, fullback Patrick Ricard, definitely want to bring him back. Steven Sims, Brandon Stevens, a starting guy on your defense, but started to rotate a little bit more towards the end of the season. Brent Urban, I think he's coming back. He posted something the other day that he was returning. Tylan Wallace, I'd love to see Tylan back because every time he gets a target, he makes the most of it. He actually was one of the leading Ravens this year in yards per catch. Linebacker Christian Welch, and then cornerback Tre'Davious White, who was a depth rotational guy. And then, of course, we got offensive tackle Ronnie Stanley. That's the biggest one, is Stanley. So the biggest ones for me is who you're going to replace to start at linebacker. If you're going to roll with Trenton Simpson, who started the year, that's fine, but you got to make a decision there. You're going to need wide receiver depth because Nelly and Tylan, two wide receivers that were on the active roster, they're free agents. And then you're going to need some cornerback help because Brandon Stevens and Tre'Davious White are both free agents. So do you go young with TJ Tampa, who you drafted? You also got Arthur Millette coming back off of injury, but he's more of a slot guy, so you definitely need some outside corner help. Marlon Humphrey and Nate Wiggins could project as the two outside guys, but Marlon played mostly in the slot this last year and had another All-Pro. And his other one was in 2019 when he played mostly in the slot, so you might want to keep Marlon there as that, nickel defender because he's really, really good at it. So biggest decision, starting outside corner, starting inside linebacker, and what do you do with Ronnie Stanley? The Ravens have some options. They could move right tackle Roger Rosengarten to the left side and bring in someone else to be a right tackle, or they could keep Roger Rosengarten, the second-round pick from the 2024 NFL draft there, because he got really good, really comfortable as the season went on. He slowed down guys like TJ Watt, Myles Garrett. He really put up a fight there, protecting Lamar Jackson's right side. And there's talks about the Ravens, getting a left tackle in the draft. There are some guys out there that could be available around pick 27 where the Ravens will be picking. But I want to know at number 4 in the comments section below, let me know who you think the Ravens should draft. Like, what's the highest position of need? Or if there's any specific players you really like. Do you think the Ravens should add another wide receiver, offensive tackle, defensive tackle, edge? I'm kind of leaning towards an edge, difference-making defender right now. But at number 5, the reason I'm leaning towards that difference-making edge rusher to kind of get in there with Kyle Van Noy and Odafe Owe, and then under the tutelage of Chuck Smith, who's been an excellent pass rushing coach for the Ravens. This stat should hurt. This stat should alarm you a little bit. All right, so check out the Ravens' turnovers that they forced on the opposing team since Lamar Jackson's been in the playoffs. It is shockingly bad. So 2 of these quarterbacks at the top here have been to Super Bowls. Obviously, the leading quarterback here with getting turnover help has won Super Bowls. So the Chiefs have forced 22 turnovers with Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. The Bengals have 13 opponent turnovers with Joe Burrow in the playoffs. The Bills have 13. And then look at Lamar. The Ravens have only forced 2 turnovers since Lamar has been in the playoffs. So not even close to a turnover a game, not even close to half turnover a game, like as compared to Mahomes, who has 22 turnovers in 19 playoff games. That's over a turnover a game. Look at Burrow. He had 7 playoff games with 13 turnovers. That's almost 2 turnovers that he gets from his defense where he gets the ball back per playoff game. That's absurd. Look at Josh Allen. He's got 12 playoff games and 13 turnovers. By the way, Lamar's 2 forced turnovers from his defense in the playoffs is actually the worst rate in history, and it's the worst margin of error ever. So if you want to talk about, increasing the margin of error and having more success for Lamar Jackson and the entire Ravens team, you got to force more turnovers in the playoffs. The Ravens have just not done that. They've not made those splash plays and forced the issue, forced errors. And I'm really hoping that Chuck Pagano getting added in, a really talented, smart, savvy, fiery coach will help that situation, as well as Kyle Hamilton, Nate Wiggins, Marlon Humphrey all back under contract to help force some turnovers. But I think you need some more consistent pass rush to make quarterbacks uncomfortable, to force strip sacks, to force tight window throws and tip balls and all that stuff, because the Ravens need more turnovers if Lamar Jackson's going to win a Super Bowl. Because think about it. The Ravens had 3 turnovers in that game against the Bills and were a 2-point conversion away from tying it up. Imagine if the Ravens just would have forced 1. You probably win that game. But if the Ravens defense would have forced 2 or 3 turnovers with the way the offense was moving the football, it's probably a blowout. You know what I'm saying? So the Bills were able to force 3. We forced none on Josh Allen. And you see the obvious results. And that was despite the Baltimore Ravens outgaining the Bills like 500 yards to like 280 yards. They dominated the game as far as moving the football and actually imposing their will. They just had dumb mistakes, didn't force turnovers, and they turned the ball over. And that's how you lose a playoff game real fast. So I just wanted to show you these numbers and talk about how brutally painful they are and how the Ravens are going to have to force more turnovers in the playoffs moving forward, and kind of give you some background of why, Lamar, people say Lamar can't perform in the playoffs, but you look at these other quarterbacks and their defense is forcing over a turnover a game, and Lamar has got 2 turnovers in 8 games, which is just terrible. All right, guys, so if you enjoyed today's content, man, make sure to leave the video a like. It does really help out the channel. I can't wait for the upcoming free agency period that's going to start here just a couple of weeks. A lot of decisions the Ravens are going to be making here soon. And we also got the draft in April. We're going to have draft content and mock drafts rolling out before you know it, man. So I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.
Ray, when he wasn't looking, he ran me over.